Madam Speaker, the Honorable Charlene White, honorable members of the Legislative Assembly, members of the audience, and those joining us online, we welcome you to our first activity of the Special Committee to Report on Access. We truly thank you for joining us, and may I say we do apologize for our late start. Tonight's proceedings is one of information gathering. We are here to listen to you, to hear from you, our public, the issues, the concerns, and your suggestions. We are streaming live from Government Information Unit YouTube page. We're also live streaming on the Spirit of Montserrat page and the Government Information Unit page. Committees are not unusual in the House of Parliament or the Assembly. They serve as one of the mediums for scrutiny of the business of government. Our Constitution provides for 2 standing committees under paragraph 63 of the Constitution Order 2010, both with the intention of monitoring the conduct of business of the government, and one being the Public Accounts Committee, which monitors the public accounts. Our standing orders provide for special committees on bills, and where we do not have a provision, we then, in accordance with Section 78 of our standing order, and I will quote, "Where any matter is not provided for, we resort to the usage and practice of the Common House of Parliament of the United Kingdom, which shall be followed as far as the same may be applied to our Legislative Assembly, and not inconsistent with the standing orders, nor with the practice of the Assembly. Where both the UK practice of the House of Commons are not of assistance on a particular issue, the practice is to refer to Erskine Me." Now, Erskine Me, just for information, is a parliamentary authority on the practice of the House of Commons. Erskine Me has indicated that select committees, as I've indicated, are commonplace in the English Westminster system. They serve as an effective tool for scrutinizing government, and they engender positive change, help to maintain the sovereignty of Parliament, and protects parliamentary democracy. The majority of the committees are generally committees of inquiry, and they take evidence, deliberate, and make reports of their findings. Select committee members have been able to acquire significant levels of expertise in the specific areas for which their committee is responsible. So this, together with the resources available to them, have reinforced the authority of their reports. That is in the UK. As well, they do send for persons, papers, and records to appoint specialist advisors. They report from time to time, and they will meet even when the House is not sitting. Tonight, our special committee to report on access issues is a committee of the Legislative Assembly of Montserrat, and the persons who are sitting were appointed from among the members of the Legislative Assembly. The membership of this committee is as follows: Honorable Donaldson Romeo, and I regret his absence; Ms. Jamel Greenaway, who is our parliamentary counsel from the Attorney General's office; and myself, Veronica Dorset Hector, chairperson. The special committee composition serves to support and ensure impartiality. The mandate and purpose of the committee are outlined in the resolution approved by the House on the 17th of January, 2023, and I will read it as follows. This resolution was amended by the House. The legislature, whereas the legislature is elected by and accountable to the public for looking after their interests and has oversight responsibility over government, policy, regulation, and practice. Whereas the legislature is empowered to appoint special committees to help it to better carry forward functions. Whereas the legislature now finds it expedient to look at the matter of access, related regulations, and access policy, given the recent developments and public concerns, be it resolved. 1, that the Montserrat Legislative Assembly forms a special committee to examine and report on access matters, and particularly issues of access by air and by sea, including ferries, cargo, docking during rough seas, relevant regulations, air access, and related regulations regarding aircraft types and airport facilities, also informed by the access policy. The said committee shall be called the Access Special Committee 2023. That the Access Special Committee 2023 shall constitute one ordinary member from each from the government and opposition benches, each chosen by his or her side, with its chairperson or co-chairs chosen by the Assembly. It will have a recording correspondence secretary selected from the legislative department and a representative from the Attorney General's chambers. The access coordinator, a representative from the Ministry of Communication. It shall have power to co-opt additional members as approved by the Assembly on review of the inception or interim reports. The House determined that the access coordinator and the representative from the Ministry of Communications will not sit on this committee. 4, that the committee and its members shall be bound by due confidentiality, but shall have a duty to report to the Assembly and public on findings, analysis, and recommendations, including a written majority report and minority remarks down to the individual member, with an inception report due in 1 month, an interim report in 2 months, and a final report in 3 in the first instance. The inception report shall have specific tasks to suggest urgent actions to facilitate access for the St. Patrick's Festival 2023, and shall lay out how the committee proposes to carry forward its work. As we are aware, St. Patrick's has passed. Time has overtaken this clause. 5th, that the committee shall have power to conduct hearings, inspect documents and accounts, have interviews, carry out town hall meetings and media appearances, and other activities expedient for its purpose, setting its procedures as members see fit on a majority basis. That upon presenting the final report to the Assembly, the committee shall automatically dissolve unless specifically extended for a stated period and purpose by further resolution. This resolution was put forward by the Honorable Donaldson Romeo. In reviewing the resolution, the committee determined that the terms of the reference of Access Special Committee 2023 were identified in Clause 1 of the resolution to set up the special committee to report on access issues, which was approved, as I said before, by the Montserrat Legislative Assembly on the 17th of January 2023, and that it is to examine and report on access matters, and particularly issues of access by air and by sea, including ferries, cargo, docking during rough seas, relevant regulations, air access, and related regulations regarding aircraft types and airport facilities, also informed by the access policy. The committee decided that the ultimate goal of the committee is to identify some urgent actions which may be taken to improve access to and from Montserrat. It will identify, examine, and report and recommend to the Legislative Assembly, to put simply. As we indicated, we intend to use various mediums to procure or to get information: town hall meetings, media appearances, surveys, social media, and holding of formal inquiry or interviews. We are here today to hear from you, the public, your issues, your concerns, and your suggestions. Our facilitators are Mr. Roy Graves, and second is Mr. Trevor Pollard, one of our youths. We wish to thank Mr. Graves kindly for consenting to assist us at this very late hour, and we thank them both. Thanks to all of you for joining us, whether in person, online, or via the internet. We will also take recommendations, suggestions, as I said, your concerns, your issues from our listeners online. Mr. Graves, I will now hand over the evening's proceedings to you.
Good evening, everybody. And I think it's appropriate that we start with prayer. So I would pray. Father in heaven, we thank Thee for the gift of life. We thank Thee for this very moment. Lord, you see the problems, the issues, the difficulties that we have here in Montserrat. And we come together for the purpose of giving our suggestions, and that the relevant authorities would take those suggestions, and under your guidance, we ask that they would yield success in solving our problem of access to and from Montserrat. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, as I've said in the prayer itself, the purpose of the meeting is to gather information from you so that the committee could put those different bits of information together and pass them on to the relevant authorities. And the bottom line is that we here in Montserrat, whether those of us who have come in or those of us who live here day in, day out, have the problem of access fixed, solved by whatever means necessary. And therefore, we're giving you online and you who are here with us the opportunity to share your thoughts, which would be recorded, and like I've said, with a view to passing them on to the relevant authorities, and that we have action on the thorny issue of access, because it is a problem, a big problem here in Montserrat for those who live here and have to travel, and for those abroad, Montserratians and others who wish to come to our country. So that's the whole purpose, that's the emphasis of this meeting. Okay, so for starters, and look, let's get this clear. We're looking for solutions. Your idea, everything about your idea, from your point of view, it is good, and from our point of view, it is acceptable. What we need is people interacting, interchanging, and out of it all, we get information, because we just don't want to talk. We want a solution. Our people want to come home, they can't get home. Our people here, and they have to travel wherever. Look, it is a case where, although there is some amount of access, it is not accessible to everybody. when we look at the cost of getting in and out of Montserrat, you better have quite a bit of money. So it's a big problem for everybody, and we want to have that resolved. The faster, the sooner, the better. So I'm opening the floor to you to ask your questions, make your suggestions, and I've said before they be recorded. So, let us talk to each other. And there's a mic ahead of you, in front of you. We wish also that you use that so what you say could be easily recorded.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Denzel West, resident citizen of Montserrat.
Welcome, Mr. West.
Thank you very much. Headshot only, please. I just came off the road exercising, so I didn't dress for this occasion. I was only reminded by a call from someone in the US that there's supposed to be a meeting this evening. So first, I just want to admonish the organizers that you need to do a better job of publicizing the meeting. I'm not sure that that guarantees that you're going to have more people than are in here, because I remember the 2010 Constitution talks didn't have much more people than were in here for the biggest issue in our country. So low attendance does not really surprise me, but I would have thought that there would be more people here. So make sure that you don't fall into the trap of thinking that ZJB is the only medium by which you should advertise. A lot of people do not listen to ZJB, trust me. More people outside of Montserrat listen to ZJB, from my observation, than in Montserrat. So you have to be careful with that. Make sure you put things on Facebook and WhatsApp. Make sure you get it around so that you get a better attendance. So that's just a little piece that I'm trying to break the ice so other people could come up. I want to point out something that I just stumbled upon 2 days ago, and that is the Legan International Aviation Company, their website. And if you recall, Mr. Graves, that was the company that built the John A. Osborne Airport, Gerald's Airport as it started out, Legan International. And if anybody wants to look, the website is leganaviation.com. And you look under their projects where they're outlining the past projects that they did. And I just found something interesting that I thought I would share. So without taking up too much time, let me just scroll to a section under the projects under Gerald's Airport where it says, the project involved the construction of a 600-meter asphalt runway with nav aids and lighting for night landings and full air traffic control equipment suite. Recall that the airport construction started, I think, in 2004. The airport was opened in June, I think, of 2005. Okay? Notice that their brief said that they should build a 600-meter asphalt runway with navigation aids and lighting for night landings and full air traffic control equipment suite. 2005 to now, 18 years plus, no night landings. That's one observation. But interestingly, the second bullet point says, a taxiway to simultaneously accommodate 2 Twin Otter type aircraft. This was the brief given to the people who constructed Gerald's Airport in 2005. A taxiway to simultaneously accommodate 2 Twin Otter type aircraft. And bullet point 3, an aircraft parking apron to simultaneously accommodate 2 Twin Otter type aircraft with power in or power out operations. And there's some other bullet points to include the tunnel to get to Drummonds. So I'm just pointing out for all of us, that the brief for the persons who were charged with building the airport included designing and building an airport to accommodate Twin Otter type aircraft. And I recall very vividly the day when the airport was opened, when on the tarmac there were 2 Twin Otter aircraft parked on the runway. It suggests to me that Legan International was demonstrating that they fulfilled their brief. The aircraft came in. There were about 8 aircraft on the tarmac at once. 2 of them for sure were Winier Twin Otters. And I have pictures to show as well, which I can give to the committee at a later date. Just to finish off, I want to go right to the bottom of the page where there's a paragraph there which I find rather interesting again. It says, the new runway sits across a topographic ridge. The length of the runway required to allow the desired aircraft type to land was longer than the ridge. So they were shown a ridge, they were given a ridge, build the airport here. The ridge was not long enough for the aircraft type that they were supposed to build the airport for. That's what I'm reading. They continue to say, it was therefore necessary to extend the runway at each end, notably the west end, due to the steep sides of the ridge and some other things there. And the vertical height of the embankment was some 30 meters, and they describe how they designed the embankment. The point to note is that when they measured the length of the ridge on which they were supposed to build an airport to accommodate a Twin Otter type aircraft, they noted that it was too short, and they extended it to accommodate a Twin Otter type aircraft. Meaning, to my mind, that if it needed to be longer to accommodate a Twin Otter type aircraft, they would have made it longer. Is that clear?
Very.
Very clear, right? So anybody that suggests to us anything otherwise now, well, they need to give us further explanation. And I'm not going to put words into anybody's mouth. People need to explain why the aircraft that the airport was built for, the airport was proven to be operable by the said aircraft.
At inception.
At inception. We remember them flying in and out. They were the ones who proved how you should do the approach signs and all of that. Those were the aircraft that were used. Okay? So, 18 years on, somebody is now deciding, persons or persons are deciding that something is not adequate for the aircraft type that the airport was built for. All right? We need
and proved to accommodate.
And proven to accommodate over 18 years. Up to December of 2022, those aircraft were landing in Montserrat. So persons need to explain what has changed. And we know that there wasn't a situation where these types of aircraft were encountering problems and falling out of the sky here or elsewhere. They were functioning. We know that these aircraft are landing on airports which are shorter than Gerald's Airport on a daily basis with full load. So we need answers. And I don't want for persons who are not involved in, how shall I say, the restrictions to give conjecture. It is the persons who put the restrictions who should give the answers. We should not try to figure it out. Let those persons who put the restrictions tell us what the issue is.
That's fair.
And I'll leave it at that for now. Hope I've broken the ice so other people can come up and give their two cents worth.
Thank you very much, Mr. West, and very significant input. So the floor is open. And Mr. West's input was a very significant input, and he's reading from a document or information provided by the persons who built the airport, had aircrafts, twin-otter aircrafts, flown in and landed at the airport, and that continued to happen for a while. The airstrip hasn't shrunk. Therefore, like Mr. West said, persons who determined that X restriction or restrictions must be applied there should come and explain how they arrived at the conclusion they have arrived at. Thank you again very much. Next. And let's keep it rolling. We don't want to be talking on the street and at home and wherever and making noise, and because none of that will solve the issue or the problem that we have. So we want everybody to make the input, and once the input is made, then we can make moves to ensure that the matter is dealt with satisfactorily, well, to the satisfaction of the traveling public. Next, please. Anybody? Mr. KB? Whoever wants to share, feel free, just come to the mic so that the information could be duly recorded, because like I've said, and many of us have said over a long time, what we want is solution, not just talk. Mr. KB?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Joseph Cady. I'm a Montserratian by born, from Drummonds.
Welcome home.
But I do come to this island regular because this is my land of birth. And also, in years gone by, I've been inviting visitors to come to Montserrat to see what we got here, and they all so far enjoyed it. But at this present moment, I cannot influence them people, well, not influence, I can't encourage them to come to Montserrat because of the state of coming in and out of Montserrat and the price. Because if I try and do that, I can't live with it. The other thing is, after listening to that gentleman's opening of the meeting, I'm now learning more about the airport itself and the kind of aircraft that was planned to take off at that airport. Now, I've been listening from last year, December, where we are trying to get the Winnie aircraft in here, and it's been stopped because of certain regulations. How come that from 2005, that airport was built for twin otters to land on it, and in December of 2022, they've been stopped because they don't have the right precautions or whatever to land here. that means we have got somebody along the line there that is pulling the strings for stopping our people from coming home. And that is not right. And we would like to find out who that person is. Because somewhere along the line, somebody should know who he or she is. And we want to get them accountable. Because what it tells me, that somebody there is picking our pockets. And we'd like to know who that pickpocket is. Because from where I come from, when we find that somebody's picking our pockets and he's been caught, they've been put in prison. And I'm not happy that somebody is picking our pockets and we cannot find that person, because he or she got to be in the room to pull the strings for them to stop Vinaya coming in here. Christmas time was our busiest period of getting our economy growing, and it was stopped. Everybody knows what happened. So therefore, let's and I hope we get answers to the questions we are asking. I don't know if they're silly answers or what, but to me, it is a question that somebody along the line is pulling the strings and getting away with it. Okay? So that's all I got to say here.
Okay. If I may ask you a question, could I? You said that you would no longer be encouraging people. That's what you normally did. You encouraged people. Not only that, you came regularly. You encouraged others to come, and you would no longer do that. Why?
Because the people that I'm trying to encourage to get here is my friends, and I would not outdo my friends and give them the wrong informations of getting here. Because the information that I would give them is beyond what they would like to pay and the time issue that they got to get here and getting back out.
So you're not only questioning the difficulty in getting here, but the cost of getting here.
The cost of getting here, and the difficulty of getting here, and the people that was here before with me. I've always had friends here from England come here and spend a good time. I rang one of the guys 2 weeks ago, and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm okay." "What about the weather?" I said, "The weather's beautiful." He said, I wish I could be there with you." Yeah.
So they want to come.
This is one of the people that came here and stayed with me in my residence for 5 weeks. He enjoyed it, so he went back and told everybody what a good 5 weeks. As a matter of fact, he came here for 6 weeks, but because of the issue of the pandemic, you know, the aircraft, British Airways was calling everybody to get back home. Mm-hmm. So he had to go back then. He didn't even want to go, but he had to go back. And he's the one who's saying to me now that he would like to be here. But I can't encourage him. I cannot. Because if I try to encourage him, I'll be false.
Okay.
Because the things that are going on and the price to get here and get out of here and the time it takes, you know what I mean? I cannot. Because I never like to tell a person something that is not right. I always like to tell them what is happening now. And what is happening now, myself, I don't even want to, explain it to anybody.
Yeah, because what we're looking at right now is something around 300 US for 15-minute, 20-minute flight from Antigua to Montserrat or vice versa, which has to be among, if not the most expensive flight
in the world.
in the entire world.
Yes.
15 to 20 minutes at 300 US. Picture if that cost applied from here to the UK or from here to the US.
Yes.
You'd have to sell your property. So it's
terms,
unacceptable.
In my terms, I would say you can split from Montserrat to Antigua, and the price we're paying for that, is not worth it. And I would not put that onto my friends.
So that's why you wouldn't invite them?
That's why I wouldn't invite them.
Okay, thank you.
At this present moment,
Thank you.
until something really happens,
So the inconvenience and the cost coupled together is just discouraging, prohibitive, and is preventing our own people from coming home, far less inviting others to come. And we need our people to come, so please come again. And we need your guests and the guests of so many other Montserratians who come home at particular times
and
of
enjoy,
the year.
enjoy what we got here. Okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name? My name is Ozzy. First of all, I want to say there was a similar meeting like this a couple of days ago, and I'm listening to the meeting tonight, and it's similar, like I said. But if we're having meetings like this for access, the majority of people that travel to Montserrat already left. And if we know that the St. Patrick's week of activities, that's when we have more people that travel in, why wasn't this meeting scheduled when these people were here so we get more participation, more people here where would actually tell you what is really going on when they travel to and from Montserrat? Because if you watch here, it's more locals, and you will find more people, the diasporan. This would be more beneficial to the meeting and to you guys making the notes for your suggestion.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. We have, over the years, we have traveled to where our people are. We call them the diaspora, for meetings. Well, that is, I suppose, pretty expensive to do. And we don't have plenty of money around this place named Montserrat. And we had them here, so the meeting for the diaspora would not have cost us anything other than the lighting and little peripheral things. So I do wholly agree with you. I cannot answer the question. I don't know. But I agree with the basis of the question.
I'll leave it at that.
Go right ahead.
We had a meeting postponed for myself to attend training for the Commonwealth, and that was already scheduled before this committee. So I can share that with my problem. Let me say.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mr.
good
Kati,
evening.
the reason for this meeting not being held was there was training already scheduled for myself and Minister Quenson. As you know, that should have happened since 2 years ago, but due to COVID, that was postponed. That's the flagship training for new parliamentarians. And hence, I was already scheduled booked already for me to travel to London as the chair. So hence, this meeting was all put off. And as we said, part of it was that we were hoping we would have been able to ascertain from persons the challenges in getting to Montserrat. But we still invite them. We thank you still for coming. And again, I would express, and I don't want this to become political, but my sincere apologies for what I learned happened. And even before I left, that was transpiring in respect of getting our people home. But we, as a committee, we will do all that we can to hear from them, and we still invite them to share, if they wish to do so, to the Legislative Assembly webpage and telephone number, which I will give in a short while. So please accept, I could say personally, my apologies. I will take my personal responsibility for us not meeting, and as well as when we had got, the resolution came and we were moving forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Carty, for the question. And as I've said, I wholeheartedly agree with the basis of the question. Go right ahead, Mr. Bramble.
Yes, I guess everybody knows me, but my name is Harford. The question, I've been hearing all of this, buying ticket from Antigua to Montserrat using the local aircraft. My question is, the airport is built for Winiers, right? Why can't we book a passage direct to Montserrat when you have Winier as an international airline, and instead of booking halfway to Antigua, and then you have to pay to come to Montserrat? And that is why I could see why it is expensive to do that, right? I think this is the way to go, instead of this going around the bush. And on top of that, we can't think about just the Montserratians returning, and we can't think about just Christmas, St. Patrick. It has to be right through the whole year. You have other people who want to come to Montserrat around July, June, where it's quiet, and they could just go online, book Montserrat. In this case, coming from England, you go on BA, you book Montserrat, you see Winnie appear, you do, case closed. I just want to know why it cannot happen.
Okay, very well, thank you. I must say straight off the bat, well, you and I know about bat, cricket bat, I cannot answer any such question. I'm not in a position in terms of offices or where I work to answer those. But your question is, why a person abroad can't book a flight straight into Montserrat rather than to Antigua and then come to Antigua to book again, and maybe they don't even have a flight available out of Antigua. And I think you hinted on about the cost also.
Correct.
Right.
And also making revenue. Because when you do that, people will come and they bring in revenue. You're encouraging people. That's how I look at it.
Right. Yeah. So how are we going to have the situation corrected where people cannot book a direct flight from New York, London, wheresoever, right into Montserrat, and the cost and convenience of getting into Montserrat?
Yes, I think that the authorities in charge should deal with that. That's how I look at it.
That's something that has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And again, I agree with you. I'm not here to defend any turf, left or right. I'm here just to facilitate the process
Yeah.
of people putting forth their ideas, suggestions, asking the questions, and looking forward to having them addressed. Speedier, the better.
All right, I hope that reach the authorities. That's all I would like to know.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Yes, let's keep rolling. Some information came in online. Why was the escape ferry rejected? Escape ferry. Why was the escape ferry rejected? Again, please know, whether you're here or online, that I'm not in a position at all to answer any question. I'm simply a facilitator. I could give my opinion on this, that, and the other, important or irrelevant, and I'm very much apt to do that. But the restrictions I have in terms of not knowing, but those are questions that are recorded. As soon as they ask, they're also written, and the view is, well, don't call me down here just for being here, is to have solutions. So the authorities need to be mindful of that. Yes, Ms. Osborne.
Good evening.
Good evening, Shirley, and I know you have plenty of questions and suggestions.
I'm not going to ask them all tonight. You just say you don't have the answers. I just want to actually, before I do anything
No,
else.
Shirley, before you continue, we want the questions because I'm told I'll be here as facilitator. The questions will be recorded. Those will be passed on through whomsoever to Parliament, because the committee was set up by Parliament to look at the issues. They report to Parliament, and Parliament does whatever it has to do locally and beyond Montserrat.
And I know Parliament well. Let me just briefly respond to Hartford, because I don't remember the name for it. There's a general group within which airlines pool, and there's a fee for being on that general list that allows you to just book straight through.
Okay.
Small airlines like Fly Montserrat, SVG, and so on, often not able to afford the costs. And I remember some years ago there had been some conversations with the government about how to accommodate that. There just wasn't, like you said, there wasn't a whole lot of money. My first question is a question of language definition. We keep talking about access. Access, I think the whole of Montserrat must have heard me say this before, just confuses the issue. It clouds the issue. As long as we keep talking about access, we're going to keep talking about, like somebody asked me yesterday about free market initiatives. Transportation into and out of Montserrat cannot be free market initiatives, in my opinion, and that of several other people. We just do not have, we are not a market. We don't have enough people going and coming. And so, for me, access is quite simply public transportation. And public transportation is a public good that has to be made affordable, convenient, reliable, and all those things, and especially affordable for normal, everyday people, yeah? $1,000 return to Antigua is not affordable to almost anybody.
So access is not accessible.
Access is not accessible, good one. Access in Montserrat is not accessible. So that's one. And I think it really, really is important. And I think the other question I have is, who are we providing this for? Who are the first people we're thinking about? Again, in conversation over the last couple of days, I got shouted at actually, about tourists and people coming and going. And my position is that the government's position ought to be that transportation into and out of Montserrat, the first line of consideration must be Montserratians. It's how we who live here get to come and go. And how, when it's easy for us, of course, it's easy for everybody else. So the notion that we talk a lot about, coordinating with other other islands, Guadeloupe, Antigua, St. Kitts, and so on, to make it easier. It doesn't make it much easier because the people coming to Montserrat are still the same. So again, so the next question is, when we do look at the other people who we want to come here, what are we doing to make it attractive for them? If we talk about access being something for tourism, who are the tourists going to come? Where are they going to come from? And more importantly, why are they going to come? Mm-hmm. What are they coming for? I asked that about the port. I asked that about the airport. If we're not doing anything on island to attract them, they're not going to come. So we could have the nicest airport, the longest strip. I saw somebody do one the other day, 2 miles out into the ocean. We could have that. They'll come just to fly off and take off again because there's nothing to come to Montserrat to do. Mm-hmm. So the question, again, the fundamental question when we're talking about access, like everything else, has to begin with what happens in Montserrat. What are we doing in Montserrat? What are we developing? What services, what attractions, what products, what people we are developing? I hear people talk about our major export is people. People are going. Yesterday, somebody messaged me from Antigua, said, surprise, surprise, there's a plane load of people coming to Montserrat, 7 or 8 people. And she was surprised that there's still people coming to Montserrat. The festival was done, and her question was, okay, why are they coming? Not she didn't want them to come, but just why are they coming? I listened to Denzel earlier, and that whole question about the length of the airstrip, I think I commented on that in social media earlier, because again, an airport was designed for specific aircraft. Nothing's changed. I've talked to people who know about aircraft. Nothing's changed. So how come we have to be looking again at whether those aircraft are fit for this airstrip? To my mind, that just, again, muddies the waters and takes attention away from the more important issues. Like I said, I didn't have my questions. The questions I'm really interested in having an answer to are those 3. Who are we designing this for? Who do we want? First of all, why are we calling it access and not just transportation? Mm-hmm. Why are we not looking at how to provide easy, affordable, convenient, reliable transportation for Montserrat? And if we're doing that, how could we be doing that and expect it to be a commercially viable business? It cannot be.
So the question is it a case that transportation for Montserrat would have to be subsidized from somewhere?
Have to be. I know that Fly Montserrat at one point had wanted to. Wendell had thought it's a business. Let's try to avoid subsidies from the government, but that's not possible. They found out that that's not possible.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, Shirley. I think we just have to be real and realistic. Mm-hmm. Montserrat government broke. Mm-hmm. Montserrat government cannot truly subsidize ferry or aircraft. Mm-hmm. But we are a British colony. We're part of well, I have a British passport. They give me one, mm-hmm. which says that I'm British. Mm-hmm. And there's certain things that government cannot do because they would have to seek permission from elsewhere because we're a colony. In Britain, transportation is subsidized wherever it needs to be subsidized. Mm-hmm. And Montserrat being part of Britain, and we'll always need transportation in and out because we're an island, our transportation should be subsidized or could be, ought to be subsidized in the same way transportation is subsidized in Britain to make access accessible for nationals across the board.
Absolutely. That is the crux of my push here. That's, I think, if we have the government understand that, we don't have the money, you ask for it. You negotiate for it. You make a case for it. Thank you.
But we need the problem solved.
Problem solved.
Thank you. Next, please.
I have another question. I'm listening to the ferry schedule, mm-hmm. and it's saying depart Montserrat at 7 a.m., return 5 p.m. The majority of the US and the UK flights are coming in somewhere around that time, around closer to 5 p.m. what is the purpose of the ferry coming into Montserrat at 5 p.m. and we have people travel from the US and the UK that still have to overnight in Antigua? Couldn't the schedule be scheduled for these later flights? Because you got a ferry coming here today with 3 people. Now, tonight, there's probably 20 people that have to overnight in Antigua, spending upwards of $1,000.
Which we need.
Right. So, I don't know. Who's coordinating the scheduling of the ferry? Because it's not, it's
not
not
serving our
working. It's not
purpose
working for
as
the
well as it
purpose
could.
that it should be. Because it's not like we have a lot of people traveling to and from Montserrat during this time. We know St. Patrick's, Calabash, we know Christmas. But the schedule have to work for people who are coming in. It's not at this time. 5 p.m., returning to Montserrat, it's not cutting it. So somebody ought to look into this kind of schedule.
Is not accommodating to people wishing to come over to Montserrat same day.
Well, it's not doing anything for the people who's coming and traveling to Montserrat.
Right.
Because the majority of people is coming from the UK or the US. And they're not going to meet the schedule of the ferry. So 5 p.m., they got to definitely make an adjustment on that 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Very excellent observation, because it happened to me before. We had traveled from London to Antigua and just couldn't get home. I had to stay in Antigua, and particularly for persons who had no plans to stay in Antigua and maybe no one to stay with in Antigua, you're going to have to pull out some hard cash to pay guest house or wheresoever, which means that money goes to another country instead of coming home and benefiting us here. So that's a very important question. Records are being made. Information is being... Yeah, go ahead, feel free.
I don't know if you all realize that they now push the schedule, since we got the ferry, they now push the schedule for British Airways coming in, I think, 8 p.m. So something is beneficial to Antigua having our Montserratians staying overnight, because since our ferry, the schedule readjusted again. So it's like 8 p.m., the flight is reaching Antigua.
Right, so what you're saying to the authorities is that the ferry schedule shouldn't be cast in stone.
Right.
It should be flexible so that we benefit more so than anybody else from our people traveling home.
Exactly, because if they're doing it, shuffling to suit them, we got to reshuffle our pack to suit us, to bring our people home. Because why let these money stay up there when we could have our people comfortably coming here? Some people come here and they don't really need money to stay here. They just come home and they could be happy with their family, you know?
Right. Okay.
We have comments via our online medium. To read it into the records, US $300 plus from Antigua is ridiculous. Why was the escape ferry rejected? And 2, yes, you have to find a quick solution since the cost of the only access to get in and out is very high. If others can, they should think about those who can't with the high cost of living. I've been through a situation that I have lost a loved one as close as Antigua, and I cannot be with my family at a time like this because there is no option. Find a solution for everyone. Thank you, and God bless.
Yeah, so like Shirley termed it, transportation is maybe Montserrat's biggest headache, transportation. that person saying they have a relative die as close as Antigua and they cannot be there because the cost is exorbitant. And hence the point that transportation, be it EAOC or whatever, should be subsidized as it is in the mother country.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
I just want to touch briefly on the ferry topic before I go back to the airport, because you said you wanted some measure of solution, so I'll go back to the airport in a second. But I just want to say that as a layman, not a seafarer, but just somebody who observes and watches things and reads, they say when you want to hide things on black people, you put it in writing. You can't hide it from me because I will read.
Okay.
Now, nobody can tell me with a straight face that the particular vessel that is running now is safer or more comfortable than the Island Escape that is sitting in Antigua or the Jaden Sun that is sitting in St. Vincent. Nobody can say that to anybody with a straight face. But we want to have answers. Somebody needs to say why, just as the question online asks, why was the Island Escape rejected? This is a vessel that came to Port Little Bay, pulled up alongside, and no official from Montserrat went near the vessel. It suggests to me something different. It don't make sense. Why would somebody bring a vessel all the way from Antigua and you decide, as the authorities in Montserrat, that you're not even going to address them? If nothing else, I would have gone on the vessel to see what 24 meters look like. You're a contractor, Mr. Graves. When you draw plans to people, they have no concept when you tell them that the room is 10 by 15. Isn't it? No idea whatsoever. You have to take them to a house that is already built, that the room is 10 by 15, to get an appreciation of what 10 by 15 is. Am I correct?
Yep.
All right? So when you get a vessel come and dock next to your wharf, please take the opportunity to go and see things. You might not get the opportunity again. But again, I reiterate, nobody can say with a straight face that the vessel that's running there now, the Vomit Express, is better, safer, or more comfortable than Jaden Sun or the Island Escape. So people need answers as to why those were rejected. When you leave a vacuum, all kinds of things come into that vacuum. So people make speculations. I read about an issue where one of or both of them needed SOLAS, S-O-L-A-S, safety of life at sea. Whatever requirements you needed to put together to get a certification for SOLAS. I am willing to bet, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, I am willing to bet that the current vessel that is running now does not have that particular certification. I am willing to bet.
Okay, so you're saying basically that whatever vessel or vessels are used need to be of minimum acceptable standard.
Not me saying that. Is our access division who've been saying that. In all of the procurement documents that go out, they specify certain things, length, and if I'm not mistaken, it also specifies that it ought to be a catamaran. This current vessel is not.
Okay.
Let me not get into that. That's a very...
No, that's important. That's part of the travel, the access, the transportation, whatever. So that's relevant.
Yes, but that is a very thorny issue, and I don't want persons to misconstrue. And you know, some people take things to a different level.
I think.
I know you
were too afraid of all that.
You watch me standing in front of you there, right? Do I look afraid?
No.
Wasn't I the first person to come to the microphone? But I'm circumspect. I'm not afraid.
Okay.
But I have to be circumspect. You understand that?
Understandable. Yeah.
Good. So let me go back to the airport. With regard to possible solutions, we have heard that certain adjustments might have been made to the usable landing area of the current strip. Like I said, we shouldn't get into the excuses, but we heard that. You heard that, right? So we need to ask the question, and we need to engage engineers to go up to the airport as it is now and tell us what would it cost to add 100 meters to the existing strip, whether by putting X number of meters to the east and X number of meters to the west. We already did it. We built up the whole area and put a tunnel underneath. They'd use all the geotextile materials and whatever.
Yep.
So certainly we could do it again to get an extra X number of meters to allow us to do certain other things. But one of the things in Montserrat that we never do properly, we never quantify things. So you hear somebody say, oh, that is too expensive. And as soon as you ask them, well, how much is it? They can't tell you. But expensive for Montserrat is not expensive for the United Kingdom government.
Okay, change.
It is nothing. How many billions did they lose from corrupt contracting with COVID-19? And the Chancellor said, we're not bothering that. 17 billion or something like that, I think the number was. Or 7, I don't know. But they didn't even bother to look for that money. Okay? So a few million is too much for Montserrat. But for our administering power, several tens of millions is nothing. So we need to quantify what would it cost to extend the airport at Gerald's by X number of meters and quantify the time it would take to do that. So how long would it take to do X and what would it cost? And that needs to be there so we can put it on the table. We also need to revive the plans that I'm told existed for Old Kwa. We were told that there were 3 options for the airport: Gerald's, Blake's, and Old Kwa. Am I correct? You remembering that?
Yes.
We were also told that Gerald's was number 3 on the list. I've also read where the United Kingdom government only paid £8 million to build Gerald's airport. £8 million. Do you recall what it cost to build the airport in St. Helena?
That could make a new Montserrat.
Okay? So we need to get things in perspective. So somebody also needs to commission a study that says whether or not an airport with a longer airstrip can in fact be placed elsewhere in Montserrat, and what will it cost? Because again, 10 million for Montserrat is far too much. But 100 million for somebody else is nothing. It doesn't move the needle. Are we agreed? We need to get away from this thing where we just say things are expensive, and we need to say what expensive is. Person said the other day, giving the civil servants 10% increase is too expensive, and they can't tell you how much it is. They never stop to figure out what it actually is. But it doesn't move the needle. When you do the maths, it's probably what? I did some rough back of the envelope calculations. You're talking 4% increase year on year. That is nothing. I'm talking 4% of the overall budget to give a 10% increase across the piece. All right?
Okay, coming back more specifically to the transportation access, whichever we prefer to call it, would you say that part of the issue that we have to look at is that of population and population growth.
Population and population growth.
Because if you even have a runway long, plenty long, and you don't have the amount of movement in terms of people, that affects the viability of
But you see, let me cut you here. I think that is where we've been looking at it incorrectly, right from the beginning.
Okay.
You're looking at how many people are here now, therefore I can build an airport only this long and seven-seater planes that is adequate for us to move. But we must think about the theory of if you build it, there will be better transportation into and out of Montserrat. More people would be here. It is obvious.
Well, I'm simply asking the question to open up the issue.
It is obvious. So we need to stop looking at how many people are here now and catering for 4,000 people and cater for development into the future. And the other thing, let me finish here, let somebody else get a chance. I want to also say that we must recognize that it is mathematically impossible for 4,000 people, out of which 2,200, if you're lucky, are working. It is mathematically impossible to expect us to build a seaport, an airport, a hospital, schools, and everything else. But I go further, and I want to posit to you, Mr. Graves.
So what you said that to say?
Right, I'm going to posit to you that it is not really any different anywhere else. Where did you live when you were in England? I'm asking the question for a reason.
I lived in Nottingham, I lived in London, and I lived in Loughborough.
Okay. The train station that you used to go to get to where you were going, do you think that any 4,000 people in your neighborhood could have paid to build it? Answer for the record.
No.
Right? No 4,000 people in the area where you lived could have paid to build the train station or the hospital and the schools in your neighborhood. So why on earth do we think that Montserrat should be able to do that? It is a strange notion. So when I hear people say, I don't want this to be misconstrued, let me be careful how I say it. But when I hear people say, oh, Montserrat should stand on his own 2 feet and do X, Y, Z and do what? Hello? At this particular point in time in our history, it is mathematically impossible. And it is also mathematically impossible elsewhere. And let me finish by saying, when we look at the larger countries, they're not necessarily doing that much better than us, you know. They're borrowing the same way. Do you know how much money the UK government borrowed to settle their bills last month?
Billions.
Billions. I think they said 17 billion, the largest amount of borrowing for a month. Right? So we need to stop looking at ourselves as less than and different too. Right? And start to operate in the world. In the world. When you don't have, you have to get it from someplace else, either by borrowing or as a grant. And when places get devastated, people who have money come back in and give you money to get back on your feet. When Germany was totally destroyed by the Allies, who built it back?
Yep. And Europe.
I visited Korea, South Korea, a few years ago, and they give you the history. Every time you go in, they tell you the whole history. And they tell you that a few years ago, after the Korean War, North and South, South Korea was the single poorest country in the entire world. And they boasted and they showed you how Jamaica gave them money. And now they've come back to a position where they can now give aid to people and call you to look at what they're doing. All right? So we need to understand and appreciate where we are and don't feel embarrassed about asking for what we need. And in some circumstances, demanding what we need. Because there is an administering power that has certain responsibilities by international law for Montserrat. And a lot of the failures that we keep blaming successive governments for is a failure of the United Kingdom government, because they did not provide the wherewithal for any one of those previous governments and the current one to do what they needed to do.
To make the comeback.
Right. So let us stop blaming each other and start to try to operate in world economics. And world economics says if you don't have, you beg or you borrow. That's the only way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw Shirley moving, I suspect.
I have.
You have something to input? Okay.
Can I just
hold your
read
seat
it?
just a
Yes.
little while, please.
We have 3 questions. One company is charging US $160, and another is charging over $220 US. When are we going to put an end to clear price gouging? Second, the Gibbs study done before the John A. Osborne Airport was built expressed the possibility of expansion at the location. This would unlock the airport to other aircraft used in the region, improving access at lower cost. Can provisions be made at Antigua Airport so that passengers can collect their bags in the security bubble and not have to go through security again? This would speed up transfer time and avoid missed flights. Thank you.
Yes, Shirley.
Thank you again. When we're dealing with issues like this, they generally have at least 2 components. The technical, the length of the airstrip, the size of the aircraft, the type of the aircraft, the type of ship, sardine can, fishing boat, Jade and Son. And they have to do with people and relationships. So when I think about in general, when we think about transportation from Montserrat, the simple, easy one, the one that comes to mind immediately is getting in and out. Healthy people getting on a plane or getting on a boat and going. Denzel talked about planning for the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead with 10, 20, 30,000 people, who knows? All of that comes down to who we're going to be and what kind of people we're going to have, what kind of work we're going to do, how we're going to live. We're building a hospital, yeah? That's going to provide some different kind of health care. I think everybody, all the medical people I've spoken to acknowledge that even if Montserrat were to have 30,000 people or 50,000 people, we would still need to be going overseas for certain kinds of medical treatment, medical attention, especially emergency medical attention. So if I still drove the way I used to, and I got in an accident and had to be airlifted out of Montserrat at, let's say, 11 o'clock at night, well, I couldn't. Although I'm told that we could fly out. Planes can leave Montserrat at night, they just don't have the lighting to land. But in order to do that, I have to get the doctor, social services, did this, did that, 20 different people I need to call to get medevac out, which makes no sense. So when I think of transportation, when I think of access to resources outside of Montserrat, and this is a primary one: health, accidents and injuries. And so when I listen to people talk about Fly Montserrat and SVG and get rid of Fly Montserrat and let Winair come in, I think, okay, cool, if it's going to make it better. However, if we're developing a country that's going to be self-sufficient, at least to a minimum, we can take care of the basics, we can make sure our people have access, either have the resources on island or have easy access to them, we have to consider how we get in and out of Montserrat in a crunch. And if we don't have an airline, we are going to die. Some of us are going to die unnecessarily because we can't leave quickly. So I want to ask the government, the parliament, the people who are working on this matter, to look very carefully, very, very carefully at the relationships they have with the airlines that we have. I know all the problems with Fly Montserrat. I know them personally, okay? What I also know is that if we don't have an airline on island, we are seriously at risk. The ferry will take, if we even have a good one, it'll take an hour and a half. An hour and a half, you could drop dead. We've had people have injuries, internal injuries, we couldn't assess them here. My brother, for example, had an illness, got a stroke, and was being told, we'll monitor you. We'll monitor. Because we couldn't get him out. The hospital here couldn't assess him properly to decide whether he was ready, he was fit for transport and all that kind of stuff. But we need to be able to do that. So I want the government to consider the relationships they have with the resources that we have and that we need. And I know that one of the things that has not happened is that the government has not stepped back, taken a good look at why we need a certain kind of transportation on island, why we need to have it here rather than in Antigua or St. Martin to call. If we're thinking about development and making sure that we are protecting our lives and keeping us healthy and safe and fully resourced, we have to look at that. We have to look at that. And so my recommendation, it's not a question, my recommendation is that the government sit down with the people who own Fly Montserrat and say, watch me, sit down, let me ask you this. Let me tell you what we want. Do we know what we want from an airline servicing Montserrat? Do we know? That's a question. Exactly. Do we know? We must know that. We must know that we also need to have emergency medevac right away anytime we need it, if nothing else. And the only way we can have that is we have something here. If we didn't have it, well, we figure it out, but we do have it. So rather than throw the baby out with the bathwater, rather than cut off our noses to spite our faces, the government needs to take a leadership position, because it has one. It owns 22%, 20% of Fly Montserrat. It can say what we
And
Yes, surely.
if
Yeah.
they're not back, please do not hesitate to send your questions that you want to ask to this Legislative Assembly of Montserrat, please.
Yes, Shirley, go ahead.
Yes, yeah, you are perfectly correct. It's just like we need an air ambulance. We need an air ambulance on site all the time. We can look at it like that. So for me, that's one of the major things about access. And in terms of who owns these things, again, it's not so hard. The government doesn't have to own the aircraft. The government doesn't have to own the ship. The government doesn't even have to have an access coordinator to tell us when the ferry is gonna run. The government creates a partnership with the commercial provider.
So it's a public-private sort of arrangement.
Just like you do with school buses. Yeah? Just like it happens with ambulances all over the world. If I get an accident or I need an ambulance in the United States, it's not the government ambulance that comes to me. And when I go to the hospital, my insurance and so on is taken care of through other means. Yeah? The government doesn't have to coordinate everything, is my point. The government doesn't have to own everything. The government needs to be able to allow people to work, provide them the support that they need so they can provide the service that Montserrat needs. But the government must first of all know what Montserrat needs, and that is the question I have. Do we know what we need? If we're not planning for 40,000 people or for 20 years ahead, then we don't know what we need, and we're going to be working for 4,000 people now. And assuming, well, you know, accidents don't happen so very often, so we don't have to make much of it. If you have 40,000 people on an island, accidents are going to happen more often.
Yep.
So we need to be planning for that.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'm glad for is that my information is that the idea behind this meeting wasn't put together by government. Mm-hmm. It came out of Parliament, yes. Opposition and present administration. And therefore, I am of the view that the possibilities, the reality of something positive coming out of it is of a greater likelihood because we're looking at the parliamentarians, the members of the House. They commissioned this, and therefore we, the populace, can hold Tut Monsaman Bagay to account.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm encouraged by that fact.
Yeah, I am too. And the only other thing I have to say tonight is that it is important that we all understand how these things are connected. Too often in Montserrat, people do what they like, when they like, how they like, all on their own, and they don't look at how these things affect other areas.
And that's why I
talk exactly about health. Now, if we have local transportation that's affordable and reliable and all that stuff, we also have support for our education. When I was going to school, we went to St. Kitts and Guadeloupe and all over the place because Leah charged, $25 to go to Antigua or something. My father had boats that were going up and down. Yeah? Our children, if we are building a country in which we are going to use our brains and we're going to be building and growing all the time, we need to educate our children properly. And keeping them stuck on Montserrat is not educating them. Mm-hmm. Yeah? They need to have experiences. They need to be able to travel. Travel is so important to opening our minds. If I had not traveled so much as a child, I probably would not be standing here having this particular conversation. It is important that we think about health, we think about education, among, if nothing else, those two things. And the one other thing I want to say is I wish that the people who are doing this, the government, the parliament, everybody else, would talk to people outside of Montserrat who are working on airlines. Like, for example, the same person from Fly Montserrat we talked about, who knows that they're developing aircraft now that don't need a long 2-mile runway. The passenger aircraft they're developing nowadays, and Roy, you would probably know something about this too, you must have heard this, aircraft that go up and down, back and forth, up and down, and flying on not using aviation gas, expensive aviation gas and all those things. So I think that if we really are looking at developing this Montserrat for the future, we have to look at where aviation is going. not where it is now. As a matter of fact, we have to look at where it is now because these things are already in the works. So if we don't have a choice, if we do have a choice of a long airstrip, of $100 million for a long airstrip, it means you also have a choice of other aircraft that cost maybe 20 or 30 million that can land on a dime, take off and land on that, not helicopters, proper aircraft. So we need to be looking at those. And it seems to me that we are not. So that is I think my final recommendation for tonight, that we do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah?
That contract, yeah. We register this down on recording. It's not going on. And we can't set it right, so we will need to.
Okay, we have a problem in terms of what being said be recorded at the same time. Okay, wonderful. Praise the Lord. So access is a big issue. It affects so many things. It's not just getting in and out of Montserrat and get to Antigua and what have you. It has spin-off effects on so very many other things that Parliament, who put this process into action, need to pay very careful attention to access or transportation because of the impact it has on so many other areas of life. I suppose that I could make suggestions also, since I'm an invitee. And one of the things I was thinking, as Johnny said up front, people in Montserrat tend not to come out to public meetings of this sort. Therefore, I'm challenging the committee which Parliament put together whenever they did, that, and Johnny mentioned ZJB too. Lots of people don't listen to ZJB, but they need to be informed and they need to be a part of the process if the process is going to work and be representative of a broad cross-section of us here in Montserrat. And one of the things that I'm suggesting is that the parliamentary committee, the committee which Parliament put together, that they get together, prepare a body of information, and just like the people do when they're conducting census, population census, that a questionnaire be made tailored to the particular purpose. A questionnaire be made, and people are paid to go from this person's bit, maybe braids, this one is Shinland, that one is Lookout, that one is, or these two would be in Drummonds, in Salem, in wherever, and get the information, put the questions there, make them pretty simple that common people understand clearly what you're asking of them, and get that information, collate that information, so that it would be representative of the broad cross-section of Montserrat, so that when whomsoever go to make their presentation, whatever it is, to the powers that be, Britain or whoever, that you really reflecting the views of the majority of the population. So not only that we use this sort of forum or some notice on ZJB, but because we really want the information in order to compile whatever we're compiling to make representation, that we get money, because that is the name of the game, to make the changes that are necessary. That questionnaire be made and people paid, like has happened with the population census, and people traverse the whole island getting feedback from as many people as possible, that whoever we are talking to would be able to see in a documented form that it is the population who's speaking and not the government or 9 members of parliament. That's my suggestion.
We have 2 suggestions. One, once there's an access that's suitable, other airlines will be able to access Montserrat. A straight flight access is needed, and that will decrease the cost, and more persons will fly more frequently. 2, we need to think about access in terms of Montserrat's wider population of 30,000 plus people. People do not come to Montserrat because it is not convenient, and the same said for tourists and investors. That's from online.
Okay, next please. Okay, we are nearing our cutoff point time. So please make your input as speedily as possible. And may I ask on behalf of the community, would we be having similar meetings in any other area?
As I've shared, we will use different mediums, and public meetings is one of the areas we'll be using. Again, as you suggested, questionnaires, different social media platforms, and any other suggestions you have, we welcome them, in addition to our formal interviews and inquiry.
And as suggested...
And see, surveys are here as well.
Okay.
Yes.
As suggested by our first speaker, meetings like these need to be thoroughly advertised. We own a radio station. The government owns a radio station. So not only when it's community diary time, because it is important and of sufficient importance, we could use just inform ZJB and spots be put on far more frequently than just the community diary. Yes, go ahead.
Just to make a comment as well, the advert that you had on the radio did not specify who was having the meeting, right? And that is very, very important. Everybody wants to know who is organizing what.
True.
Right? The other day when the diaspora people came down to the by-government headquarters down there, the question everybody was asking, who is organizing it and what is it about? So there needs to be a little bit more of a preamble, I think, and they need to specify who is having the meeting and the purpose of the meeting. And another suggestion I would like to make to get a better attendance is that you actually invite groups to the meeting. So for example, I'm not a member, but for example, I know one of the very active groups in Montserrat is the Rotary Club, and they have meetings on a particular night.
And Dave Hill community.
So invite them en masse to one of your meetings instead of what they're doing wherever. Maybe they might still want to do their little thing, but you understand what I mean?
Of course.
Invite a group.
Groups.
So that you get the room full of people who hopefully will be attentive and who hopefully will feel comfortable enough to contribute. That's another thing. We have to be cognizant of the fact. It is the reality. People are not comfortable speaking out in public meetings. I was here a couple days ago when they had the other diaspora meeting, and I guarantee you, more conversations happened on the outside than what happened in here. So we need to find a way to make people comfortable and to feel as if there wouldn't be any backlash, or, people are worried about certain things. Mm-hmm. And we need to make people more comfortable so that they share. And also, persons need not be afraid that they're not as eloquent as the next person. If you have an idea, just come up and put the idea on the table and let it be as it is.
Yeah, because Montserrat belongs to all of we.
Right, and we should be able to speak in any manner that we feel, as long as we get our viewpoint on the table. And as I said, there are other things I might say to you off mic, off camera, right? Because I have to be circumspect. But there are persons who are in the different employ and who are coming in from overseas who should really be able to be a lot more forthright and open in their speech in a public meeting.
And yeah, I agree with that. And then again, if you're not comfortable speaking in public or you're afraid, and I don't like the afraid bit, because if Parliament asks us to come out and give our ideas, ask our questions, and then I do it, and you turn around to pressure me, well, I'm glad how I'm made or how I was trained. If you try that, I mean, not going to work. But everybody not of the same nature. But maybe what could happen is that you could give your idea to somebody who is unafraid to speak, not afraid of public presence, and therefore your idea still get across. Or there should be means by which you could write your questions and send them into whomsoever, maybe the person in charge here, or wheresoever. But it's important that we speak, because all of us feeling the squeeze, and some of us plenty more than others, so that your voice, your opinion, your suggestion, your solution, whatever, let's pool all our ideas and present them to whomsoever, and they in turn are responsible to us. Because, well, for me, I don't know why people afraid politicians, because I hire the politician. And if you squeeze my throat now, I could squeeze yours given time. So you're responsible and accountable to me, the general population. So let's do our best to pull our ideas, work together with a view of the authorities making the right kind of representation on our behalf as a nation, with a view to having things improved. So that, look here, come next year, God's willing, my mother taught me to say, you could head overnight. Come next year, God's willing. We don't want to be facing the same issues, the same problems, the same bawling, mourning, pressures, whatever they are. Let us come together over this period of time, as allowed by our Parliament, to put our ideas together, offer our solutions, and they taking them forward, so that come next Christmas, come next Easter, we have an improved situation, if not completely fixed, that it is greatly improved for the benefit of all of us. Thank you very kindly.
Okay, thank you for your suggestions, and I will confirm again that the process will be ongoing, and we are inviting anyone who may wish to share information with us by contacting the clerk of the committee, Dr. Judith Baker, at the legislature office via email or telephone. Telephone number being 664-491-2195. Email legis@gov.ms, that is legis@gov.ms. And just to add that we also plan to go to groups, because we recognize that some persons are not comfortable speaking in public. And again, we want to reiterate that we invite you to share information by contacting the clerk, Dr. Baker, at the legislature office via email or telephone 491-2194, email legis@gov.ms, legis@gov.ms. We also have 2 other comments. No one has confirmed what needs to be done to open up the J.A. Osborne Airport to night flights, say up to 7:30 p.m. What is the cost to improve the quality of service at J.A. Osborne Airport? This will mean less layovers in Antigua. What is the true cost of travel to and from Montserrat? Who is responsible for regulating the prices we are asked to pay for travel to and from Montserrat? Can we get a breakdown of the different prices? So all of these questions, this committee will seek to find answers for. Okay, we're not giving answers tonight. This is an information gathering, and your sharing help us to expand our search even further and collate the information about who we need to speak to, what other information we may need to get. This is quite an in-depth inquiry with great width and depth. So we encourage you to work with us and share information. For those who participated tonight, thank you very much. For Ranger Montserrat and the entire team here with us. And anyone else who have helped, I see the sound man, I do not have the name, so I don't want to disrespect. Maiga, thank you so much for the services, we truly appreciate. And all of you who have come to join us tonight, in person and online, we wish to thank you.
Philip and his team.
Yes, Philip and your team, thanks again to all of you.
May I ask you one question, though? How soon can the public look forward to the final report, and will that report be made public?
As I indicated, this inquiry is one of great depth and width, and it has to be done properly. It will go, the inception report we will take to Parliament so they know where we are, and then we will come back out, and if it is necessary for us to bring in a report and then make a recommendation for further inquiry in certain areas, we will look at all the options that are available. Yes, this report would be made public, and all our reports are public. We seek to adhere to transparency and getting our people involved. That is what parliamentary democracy does. It is your parliament, and we are here to account to you for what is done, and we truly thank you for participating in this way.
Honorable Parliamentary Representative.
Honorable Chairman tonight.
And Honorable Chairman.
I am the chair
and
tonight.
plenty of hats. We thank you very kindly for chairing the meeting and for opening this to the public. And we do look forward to information coming back to us, the public, on the findings of the committee and the recommendations and the solutions, etc.
And thank you, Mr. Facilitator. We now know that your service is available, so we'll be using you. I also want to thank the member of the team, Ms. Jamil Greenaway, and we could not do it without the staff. We just could not do it without the staff at the Legislative Assembly. And I see Dr. Baker is congratulating and thanking our clerk here with us again tonight. So thank you to everyone. If I, by any chance, have forgotten you, please accept my apologies. I am sure Mr. Romeo, if he's still up, is joining us online, and he will have his comments. Thanks again, and good night.
Thank you.